Welcome back, friends. Today we are doing a updated Dynasty quarterback rankings video. Keep in mind, if you have not already seen running backs and tight ends, they are already posted to my channel, so go check them out. We have wide receivers coming on the way. I will give the disclaimer I always give in these tier videos. I'm not a big tier guy. I'm not going to tell you this is the S tier or the A tier or the B tier. I'm simply going to break them up and give you my thought process on why I have them divided this way. But to start with tier 1, I wanted to keep it simple and simply have it as guys I believe are going to go in the first 2 rounds of your Dynasty Superflex startup drafts this offseason. And so let's dive right in here with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson still remaining as my 101 and 102. Now, I know some people are starting to lose some faith in Lamar when he's had some slow games and down performances this season. What frankly remains here with these two guys is contract insulation, former MVPs, fantastic rushing upside, and still under the age of 30. All those factors combined should give you plenty of runway on these two guys, and I believe that even though Josh Allen has even had his up and down games this season, they will continue to garner the most amount of value for your rosters. Following is we have one of the biggest risers of the season, Drake May. And to be frank, guys, I just did a Dynasty Superflex mock draft video last week with real Dynasty players. And as you probably saw in the video that's on my channel, Drake May ended up going 101. So I would not be surprised to see him go as high as the 101 this offseason. Some people are extremely bought into him. I honestly would have no issue with you taking him 101. The only reason why I have not put him up to the pinnacle of my rankings is simply because I am a Dynasty player who really, really likes to bank on consistency and longevity. As you know me this offseason, telling you to go buy guys like Devontae Adams and Michael Pittman. Guys that are able to line up at least 3 top 20 finishes in a row are guys I want on my roster. Those two guys that I just mentioned have done that in their career, as have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. When I start to see that out of Drake May, I will gladly rise him up in the rankings. The next one I have is Patrick Mahomes, who's seen a nice value boost this season and has returned back to the fantasy form we have come to expect from him. Now, while the Chiefs haven't been the most explosive team on offense in real life and are struggling to potentially make the playoffs, in fantasy, Patrick Mahomes has found himself in the top 5 for the season and is giving you fantastic production. That mixed with the contract insulation and his status and name value, I do think puts him comfortably at the number 4 spot. Now I have Jalen Hurts, and I know some people are going to fight me on Jalen Hurts above Jaden Daniels. Again, this is my bias of having sustained longevity in the league and the fact that I've been able to see Jalen Hurts put up top 10 finishes on a continuous basis gives me more faith in him overall. Not to mention, I'm just a more strong believer in the Eagles roster construction and their general offense and talent than I am with what I have on the Washington Commanders, where the cracks are already starting to show 1 year removed from them making an NFC championship game. They have the oldest roster in football, are struggling immensely this year, and I know a large part of that is injuries, but still, I do have him 1 spot ahead of Jaden Daniels, and I will be curious to see how far Jaden Daniels falls from last year, as he was the guaranteed 103 and sometimes even higher in most of my startup drafts. Although I will say, if the tush push gets banned this offseason, which I expect it to, Jalen Hurts could drop a little bit lower in these rankings. So I will continue to update them as we go along throughout the offseason, guys. So make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned. After that, I have Joe Burrow. Simply put, Joe Burrow is an immense talent, still at age 28, while he has had major injury concerns in his career, and that's the part I don't like about him. When he is on the field, he has some of the best weapons in the game with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, an extremely, extremely dangerous offense and high-scoring fantasy football offense. For all those reasons, I do believe Joe Shiesty should go just above my next guy, who's an incredible riser, Jackson Dart. And to be completely frank, I would not blame you for taking Jackson Dart even higher. I was not the biggest fan of his prospect profile, and I will admit that. But boy, was I wrong. This man has come out. He has revolutionized an organization that has been stuck in mediocrity for years. He's got insane rushing upside, and while I do worry how sustainable that is with the amount of hits he's taking, I think that he will develop and become a bit smarter and still be able to use his legs, but also is going to regain weapons next year like Malik Neighbors, which should open up his passing opportunities even higher moving forward. The final guy I have here who I think should go in the first 2 rounds of your Dynasty Superflex is Justin Herbert. As you've seen, this Chargers offense has really ascended this year, has some great weapons behind it in their receiver room and now in the tight end room as well, with Gadsden emerging, not to mention young players like Amarian Hampton and drafting Trey Harris and Ladd McConkey. All these guys give me a lot of faith for the future that Justin Herbert is going to remain an extremely competitive quarterback with rushing upside for fantasy football. The next tier is guys that I would be taking between rounds 3 and rounds 6 of my Dynasty Superflex startup. Kicking off that list is Bo Nix. While he's had quite the drop from last year and a bit of a sophomore slump as the Denver offense has looked less than productive on multiple occasions this season, he still does have the keys to the franchise, some pretty solid weapons around him in Cortland Sutton and an emerging Troy Franklin, while also having Evan Ingram, who's disappointed this year, but a receiving back like RJ Harvey at his disposal. I still think Bo Nix will see better days. And seeing that he's still a very young guy, only in the second year of his NFL career, I understand taking him at this range. Now, the next one I think is going to be a bit of a hot take for most people. I do have Brock Purdy above both Jordan Love, Mayfield, Goff, Caleb Williams, all of them. My real reasoning on this is a couple things. One, Kyle Shanahan. I think the 49ers have an incredibly quarterback-friendly system, and as you've seen over the years, he's been able to make guys like Jimmy Garoppolo look plenty talented and even take that team to a Super Bowl. I don't believe Brock Purdy has to do too much to continue to be a productive quarterback in this offensive system, and for that reason, I think he's very insulated. When we talk about insulation, we also talk about contract. He just signed a $250 million mega deal this offseason, which most of you remember, meaning that Brock Purdy is locked up for the foreseeable future, and I do not have to worry about him going anywhere in the organization that he's in, with great weapons like McCaffrey and Kittle and hell, even Pearsall and Ayuk for the moment, who's probably on his way out the door. But I always trust that San Francisco organization to continue to find talent. Next, I have Jordan Love. The Packers have looked great this season at times, but then have also struggled at times. He's lost major weapons like Tucker Kraft, and obviously there's been guys like Christian Watson who've slowly come back into the building, Jaden Reed who's missed time, and Matthew Golden who's yet to have his breakout. All in all, I do believe in the Packers offense, in Matt LaFleur, and in Jordan Love and his high-powered arm. We forget how young he still is at only age 26. I do believe his value could continue to rise higher throughout his career, and I think it's a comfortable position to have him in. Next, I have Baker Mayfield, who was the reigning MVP, or not reigning, but he was the MVP of choice for the first half of the season. He's really died off here a bit. Now, while I still see Baker Mayfield as a highly productive fantasy guy for the next 3 years, offering you a tiny bit of rushing upside, but a great competitive edge with surrounded by awesome weapons, and now with a young new one like Emeka Egbuka in there, makes me very excited for the future. That all being said, I do think that him and Jared Goff are basically the two guys in my mind that are your steady earners. They're productive, they're consistent, they're always going to find themselves between the 8 and the 12 spot finish in fantasy football, and that just makes me sleep really easy at night. Can you win championships rostering these guys? Absolutely. You don't always need to spend huge on quarterback to win. And I think Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff are your perfect, productive value guys in the middle to get. And quite frankly, the amount of teams I own these guys on is quite disgusting. After that, I do have Caleb Williams, and I know a lot of people will fight me on this and have him way higher. Quite frankly, the Bears have been good, and Caleb Williams has not. And even though the fantasy box score would tell you otherwise because he's punched in a lot of rushing touchdowns and does offer some scrambling upside, I still don't love his footwork in the pocket. I still don't love his decision making. And I still think he errs a lot of throws and doesn't understand how to put the right amount of power and control behind passes. Now, he's very young, and obviously under Ben Johnson in a far better offensive system, I do think he could rise up. And so he's probably a good investment to make. However, I don't own a single Caleb Williams share across 20 leagues. That should probably tell you where I land on Caleb Williams. But I'm quite frankly not willing to pay the premium price for the product that I've seen today. And I'm willing to have my mind changed over time. After that, I have CJ Stroud, a guy that I think people have dropped way below their draft boards, but I still believe in. The amount of quarterbacks that have made the playoffs in their first 2 seasons and still have the potential for the Texans to make the playoffs this season, while it hasn't been completely flashy since the freshman campaign of his, and his fantasy points have been far from fantastic this season, CJ Stroud is so young, and he is the future of that Texans franchise. So when I talk about insulation, like I mentioned with a guy like Brock Purdy, I see that times 2 with CJ Stroud since he hasn't even signed his extension yet. And I think sometimes, rather than believing in everything you're seeing today, it is okay to make that investment for the future. And since we've already seen it in the past, I know it's in there. It's just about building the right system around him, whether that's offensive coordination changes, an upgrade in the offensive line, or adding more weapons, whether it be in the run game or the passing game, to help the Texans find their stride again. After that, I have 2 guys who have risen way up my boards this year, Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. 2 second-chance wonders here that have found new homes, got an extension, one of them has, in Sam Darnold, and Daniel Jones, I do believe, will get a large-scale extension this offseason and potentially vault his dynasty value even higher. Fair word of advice to my dynasty owners out there: if you are struggling for a quarterback right now, I highly suggest buying Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones before their price goes up in the offseason. I genuinely believe you're going to see a market correction on these 2 guys, and you could still acquire them for a very team-friendly price at this stage, and I feel great about either of them as my quarterback 2 rolling forward. Now, the next guy I have is Dak Prescott. Obviously a little bit on the older side now, starting to enter his 33 year, but at the same time, Dak still is getting it done in a big way this season in Dallas. Regardless of their record, that offense has been humming, and Dak has been able to support both Jake Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Javonte Williams, and still can command an incredible amount of fantasy volume. I think Brian Schottenheimer is bringing out some of the best in him, and I would be totally fine as well rolling with Dak for the foreseeable future as my quarterback 2, at least for the next 2 years. Now, the final guy I have in this tier is Trevor Lawrence. And I know a lot of people out there are done with Trevor Lawrence, don't believe in Trevor Lawrence. I'm not one of them. I think Liam Cohen is starting to ascend this offense, and although you didn't see it take shape right away, Trevor Lawrence is quietly putting up a top 15 fantasy football season, and that's all I really need out of a quarterback too. Not to mention, he's a first overall pick. He still is incredibly young. He has his contract, and he's attached to a coach that I believe in. All of those things mixed with the weapons like Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter and Brenton Strange and potentially an extended Travis Etienne or Baishal Tutin still makes me believe that I can get consistent QB 15 numbers from a guy that's in the middle, but has the upside to potentially go higher in the future, which is why I'm still fine investing in Trevor Lawrence. The next tier I have is guys that I believe will fall below the 6th round of your dynasty startups, probably in the 7th to the 10th round. And that's going to be, the first one will be Cam Ward. I think it's mainly not actually based off of some of the production we've seen this season, which is at times has actually looked quite good. And it's more of how long of a road that the Tennessee Titans have to get back to become really fantasy relevant. And I just look at that team and I see so few bright spots that I wonder, do I want to go along for the ride? That being considered, if you are a deep rebuilding roster and you're looking to play for maybe 2 years from now, I think Cam Ward's a fantastic buy and hold, as I still genuinely believe in his talent level and his prospect to continue to ascend and be a solid fantasy producing quarterback someday. It's just in the immediate that I feel less confident rolling him out on a contending roster. The next guy I have is Kyler Murray. And I think Kyler Murray is going to remain in this range until he gets out of the limbo situation that he's in Arizona. Now, if the season ends and Kyler Murray signs a big deal with a different team right out of the gate, you could see his value jump back into tier 2 because of the rushing upside that he provides you for fantasy football purposes. But because of the uncertainty there, getting soft benched to Jacoby Brissett, not being productive over the last couple of years, struggling with injury, until I see a change in his situation, there is an amount of risk that comes with Kyler Murray. And I think drafting him at this position is a fair level to assume that risk, but also understand that there's upside in the future. The next two guys I have are Michael Penix and Bryce Young. You could flip them if you wanted to. Bryce has actually looked quite good in the recent weeks and is ascending on a Panthers team that's fighting to make the playoffs. I personally am just a bigger believer in Michael Penix's arm and general talent level. I loved watching him at University of Washington lead that team to a national championship appearance, and I still think that there's plenty of good to come from Michael Penix. Now, I'm not sure if it's the offensive coordination going on in the Falcons or just the struggles of him having his true rookie year this year. Now, having another season-ending knee injury after he's had several in his career definitely makes me a certain level of nervous for the future, but I do believe in him to come back, and after still only playing one true season in the NFL here, he's got a lot of runway to continue to ascend in his career. And since he's not a prototypical runner that needs to rely on his legs and taking off to get scramble yards, I think that, his clock is less numbered than other quarterbacks, right? So even though he came out as an old prospect, he still has plenty of time in the league to prove that he can be a upside starter and a solid fantasy producer. Finally, the last two I have here are Matthew Stafford and J.J. McCarthy. I have Matthew Stafford above him because if he decides to not retire this season and come and play another year, Matt Stafford's potentially coming off the best year of his career and has given you top 5 fantasy football production, shockingly, at age 37. So there's some risk that goes with Matt Stafford, but at the same time, if you can get him for value and he's going to come back and play one more year, I think you could probably be getting potentially the best steal of your startup draft. Finally, I have J.J. McCarthy, which I barely have in this tier. To be completely frank, I would like to drop him even to the next tier. I just believe with the amount of draft capital that the Vikings organization put into him, not to mention the way they've backed themselves into a corner from a cap perspective, signing tons of offensive and defensive linemen, really building those trenches, paying guys like Justin Jefferson, having Jordan Addison's contract on the horizon, extending Aaron Jones. All these things have put them in a situation where they can't afford to go sign a big-name free agent guy. And so for that reason alone, regardless, they probably have to either roll with J.J. McCarthy and give him more time or just bring in a cheap vet for him to learn behind and eventually still hand over the keys and give him more shots in the future. And I do think someone will still take a chance on J.J. McCarthy before that 10th round in your Dynasty Superflex startup. Now, these final tiers mean very little to me. If you own any of these guys, you're probably not feeling great about yourself outside of Shedeur Sanders. Now, Shedeur Sanders has looked actually slightly encouraging after this week's performance and could potentially have some upside in the Browns. I just think the Browns are such a dumpster fire of an organization that I'm not really any of the pieces of their offense get me wildly excited outside of Judkins and potentially Harold Fannin if you play in a tight end premium format. That all being said, I'm willing to stash Shedeur and take a chance on him and spend a low price on him because he could pay dividends. But to be frank, I still don't feel great about it, and I think the Browns have a long way to go to figure out the true direction they want to take this franchise. Next, I have Tua, who speaks for himself. I think, unfortunately, Tua has played himself out of his contract. Now, it is a hellish cap situation for the Dolphins, and they need to enter potentially a full rebuild, even with their coaching situation and everything this offseason. So they might have to roll with Tua for one more year, so he might be a spot starter for you just until they deal with their cap effectively. And so he probably still has some relevancy here, but value-wise, I just never feel good about rolling out a guy that could get me 30 points one week and then -8 the next, and the turnovers have been a nightmare this year. Speaking of turnovers, Geno Smith. Now, whether the Raiders decide to roll with him one more year, which I personally think they do. I know Pete Carroll is an extremely loyal players coach. He traded for him. He wanted to, reshape that organization. And quite frankly, they will have a high draft pick, but I'm not sure if they're going to go the quarterback route, seeing that their offensive line and their trenches are such a mess. They probably need to address that first. That all being said, you could get one more year out of Geno here and, again, still provide you with some level of relevancy. But the fact that he hit 10 interceptions before, we even hit the midway point of the season makes me extremely, extremely unmotivated to trade or really try to acquire him in any way on a dynasty roster at this point, because I think you're just buying a depreciating asset. Next, we have Tyler Shook. Again, a guy I just don't really believe in long-term. Extremely old prospect on a franchise and organization that is also in cap hell, and I just don't see their immediate path to success anytime soon. Not an offense I'm buying a lot of pieces on. Then the last one I'll really touch on here is Anthony Richardson. Still has some potential upside of the future, while I do think the Colts are going to roll with Daniel Jones here. There has been some chatter about him potentially getting traded to the Los Angeles Rams to develop under Matt Stafford for a year or two. And if he gets to work with a coach like Sean McVay, that could be exciting. I think those kind of rumors give you a tiny bit of hope with Anthony Richardson, because he was such a raw, young prospect that he might still get other chances in this league, regardless of the Colts organization. But also not a guy I'm acquiring a lot of right now. Aaron Rodgers is probably done after this year. Jalen Milroe probably has some upside in the future still, but honestly, I think Sam Darnold's playing all that potential out of him. Like, Sam Darnold's on such a team-friendly deal and playing at such a solid level. I don't think the Seahawks are going to really move on from him anytime soon. The last two, in Rattler and Winston, they're probably decent career backups to have, guys that I would keep on my roster, because I think Spencer Rattler could be a fine backup spot starter that still gives you fantasy relevancy over the years like a Jacoby Brissett has. The final tiers, as we mentioned here, are guys that I just find to be completely and utterly irrelevant. Russell's going to hang it up. Joe Flacco's going to hang it up. Dylan Gabriel means nothing to me. Justin Fields means less than nothing to me. Kirk Cousins is done. Garoppolo is a backup. Pickett, Taylor, Milton, Rudolph, Willis, they all speak for themselves. Now, I will say Malik Willis, I kind of just forgot and left him down here. You could probably put Malik Willis over in this category of the Spencer Rattlers and Jalen Milrose of could be a career backup and have some upside, and you never know with these kind of guys. Maybe they have a Geno Smith late career revival. Guys I don't mind having on my roster, but don't mean a lot to me. All that being said, guys, thank you so much for coming along the journey with us today. If you haven't already checked out the other positional rankings, make sure you go show that some love on my channel, please. If you're not already a subscriber, please drop a quick subscribe. Like and comment on this video really helps me grow on the platform. And outside of that, if you are looking for your chance to talk ball with me anytime, get my feedback on your Dynasty teams, participate in our Dynasty Trade Center, submit your questions for the trade shows that come out weekly on this channel as well, that is all going to be done in the Discord. There is a free link to join below, and if you want access to some of the premium channels, please subscribe to my Patreon page, which I will also have linked in the Discord and on my website. If you're looking for a full roster review and breakdown with a full 3-year plan, you get to sit with me, have a consultation. We unpack your league, your roster, all the moves I would make, and prepare you to build a true dynasty. That is also available on my website, dynastypricecheck.com. Simply get yourself a dynasty detox, and I would be happy to help you guys out. Thank you so much for coming along again today, guys. The support means everything, and I will be seeing you again very soon to break down wide receivers shortly.